You're huddled in a foxhole somewhere in the Ardennes Forest, December 1944. The thin wool jacket you were issued back in September feels like a paper towel against this cold. Your fingers are numb, your breath hangs in the air like tiny ghosts. You hear the distant rumble of what might be German armor, but that's not what's truly terrifying you right now. It's the cold that's seeping into your bones, the cold that won't let you sleep, the cold that's making your teeth ache even when you clamp your jaw shut. The real danger wasn't just the German offensive that caught everyone by surprise. It was something far more insidious, something that would kill more men than bullets ever could. By the end of this, you'll understand the dark reason why winter turned the Battle of the Bulge into something far worse than anyone had anticipated: a slow, grinding death by cold. The American High Command had grown comfortable by December 1944. The German army appeared to be collapsing on all fronts. In the Ardennes sector, a stretch of dense forest and rolling hills along the Belgium-Germany border, things were quiet. So quiet they called it the Ghost Front. American commanders believed this was the perfect place to rest and refit green units, to send battle-weary divisions for what they thought would be a peaceful winter. The terrain was considered poor for armoured warfare, with its narrow roads, thick forests, and few major routes of advance. Who would launch a major offensive here? The Germans were on their last legs, everyone said. The war would be over by Christmas. That's what they believed as American soldiers settled into their positions, many still wearing the same lightweight uniforms they'd worn during the autumn campaigns. No one was thinking about winter warfare. No one was thinking about what happens when temperatures drop to 20 below zero and stay there for weeks. Then the shooting started, and the paper logic died. On paper, the German plan was brilliant: a massive armoured thrust through the Ardennes, splitting the Allied armies and seizing the vital port of Antwerp. It was called Operation Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine, but its true goal was offence, not defence. Hitler had thrown his last reserves into this gamble, concentrating his best remaining panzer divisions for a lightning strike. The Ardennes was perfect for this approach because the Allies wouldn't expect it. The element of surprise would compensate for the difficult terrain. German commanders had studied Napoleon's campaigns through the same forests. They knew the challenges, they knew the risks, but they also knew that if they moved fast, they could achieve their objectives before the Allies could react. Speed was everything. Surprise was everything. The American troops in the sector were mostly inexperienced or exhausted. The German armoured columns would roll right over them, but the advantage came with a bill, and winter was about to present it. The first dark reason was the most basic. American troops were completely unprepared for winter warfare. When the German offensive launched on December 16, 1944, many American units were still equipped with summer uniforms. The supply system had prioritized ammunition and fuel over winter clothing. Why waste resources on heavy coats and boots for what was supposed to be a quiet sector? The mechanism was simple but deadly. The human body cannot function for extended periods in extreme cold without proper protection. In the Ardennes, temperatures plummeted to zero and then kept dropping. Snow piled up feet deep. Battlefield reality meant soldiers were fighting in summer jackets, leather boots that weren't waterproof, and thin gloves that offered no real protection. The human experience was agonizing. Imagine trying to load your rifle with fingers so numb you can't feel the trigger. Imagine sleeping in a foxhole while snow falls on you, knowing that if you fall asleep, you might never wake up. The consequence was staggering. Frostbite and exposure casualties began mounting almost immediately, sometimes outpacing combat wounds. You're there in that foxhole, trying to keep your M1 Garand dry as snow melts into the mechanism. Your buddy Johnson is shivering uncontrollably next to you, his lips turning blue. "They told us we'd be home by Christmas," he chatters through clenched teeth. You don't answer because you're saving your energy for staying alive, and that was only the first problem. The second dark reason was how winter transformed basic battlefield injuries into death sentences. In normal conditions, a soldier wounded in the leg or arm had a reasonable chance of survival if evacuated quickly. But in the Ardennes winter, evacuation became nearly impossible. The mechanism was straightforward. Snow and ice made roads impassable for ambulances. Temperatures made helicopter operations, still in their infancy, impossible, and the German advance cut off many evacuation routes. Battlefield reality meant wounded soldiers often lay in the snow for hours or even days before receiving medical attention. The human experience was horrific. Imagine being wounded but unable to move, feeling the cold slowly seeping into your wound, your body temperature dropping with each passing hour. Imagine watching your comrades struggle to carry you through knee-deep snow while German artillery falls around you. The consequence was a dramatic increase in what should have been survivable wounds becoming fatal. Every medic in the Ardennes knew the terrible calculus. A soldier who might survive a gut wound in summer had almost no chance in winter. You're there, trying to apply pressure to your friend's wound with numb fingers, watching as the blood freezes on your gloves. "Just hang on," you tell him, but you both know it's a lie. The nearest aid station is 10 miles away, and the snow is falling faster now. And even if you somehow make it, what awaits you there? That brings us to the next problem. The third dark reason was how winter completely broke down military logistics and supply systems. Modern warfare runs on supply lines, fuel, ammunition, food, medicine. But winter in the Ardennes turned these lifelines into nightmares. The mechanism was clear. Snow and ice made roads nearly impassable, trucks would break down or get stuck, and the German advance disrupted supply depots and distribution networks. Battlefield reality meant that even when supplies were available, they often couldn't reach the front lines. The human experience was one of constant deprivation. Soldiers ran low on ammunition, food, and most critically, medical supplies. Imagine rationing one cold meal a day, sharing it with 3 other men. Imagine watching your vehicle run out of fuel while German tanks approach. Imagine being a medic with no morphine left, no bandages, nothing to offer the wounded except a blanket that's already frozen stiff. The consequence was a force that grew weaker with each passing day, not just from combat losses, but from the slow erosion of combat effectiveness due to lack of supplies. You're there, staring at the last 5 rounds for your rifle, wondering if you should save one for yourself if the Germans break through. Your stomach growls, but you've already eaten your half ration for the day. The supply trucks were supposed to come yesterday, but the road is blocked by snow and burning vehicles, and even if they get through, what will they bring? That brings us to the fourth dark reason. The fourth dark reason was how winter conditions rendered much of the American military equipment useless or dangerous to operate. The mechanism was simple. Metal contracts in extreme cold, lubricants freeze, and engines refuse to start. American equipment wasn't designed for Arctic conditions. Battlefield reality meant tanks wouldn't start, trucks broke down, weapons jammed, and radios failed. The human experience was one of technological betrayal. Imagine watching as your tank crew tries repeatedly to start the engine while German infantry advance through the trees. Imagine trying to clear a jammed machine gun with frozen fingers while enemy fire comes closer. Imagine trying to call for artillery support on a radio that won't work because the batteries are dead from the cold. The consequence was that even when American forces had numerical or equipment advantages, winter often neutralized them. A Sherman tank that could dominate in summer weather became a 30-ton steel coffin in the Ardennes winter. You're there, slapping the side of your half-track, willing the engine to turn over. The German infantry is getting closer, and your 50 caliber machine gun won't fire because the lubricant has frozen solid. Your sergeant is screaming, get it running now! But you might as well be yelling at a rock, and even if you could get it started, where would you go? The roads are impassable. Which brings us to the fifth dark reason. The fifth dark reason was how winter conditions transformed the tactical situation into something that favored the Germans despite their numerical inferiority. The mechanism was counterintuitive but real. The harsh winter conditions actually helped the German offensive in several critical ways. Battlefield reality meant that snow and fog provided cover for German movements. Frozen rivers created new crossing points, and the cold forced American units to consolidate in villages for warmth, making them predictable targets. The human experience was one of constant tactical disadvantage. Imagine being ordered to defend a position that's indefensible in winter conditions. Imagine watching German troops move with relative ease through terrain that was supposed to slow them down. Imagine realizing that the very winter you thought would protect you is actually helping the enemy. The consequence was that American units often found themselves outmaneuvered tactically, not because of German superiority, but because winter conditions had flipped the tactical calculus. You're there, watching German troops advance across a frozen lake that was supposed to be an impassable barrier. Your orders are to hold the village at all costs, but every building is burning and the smoke makes it impossible to see. The cold has made your radios useless, so you can't call for support. You're isolated, freezing, and nearly out of ammunition, and the Germans keep coming, which brings us to the final dark reason. The sixth dark reason was the psychological toll of fighting in extreme winter conditions. The mechanism was insidious. Constant cold, sleep deprivation, and physical discomfort eroded morale and mental resilience. Battlefield reality meant that soldiers who might have fought bravely in normal conditions became withdrawn, fatalistic, and sometimes unwilling to fight in winter conditions. The human experience was one of psychological collapse. Imagine day after day of being cold, wet, hungry, and exhausted. Imagine watching friends die not from enemy fire, but from exposure or frostbite. Imagine feeling that nature itself has become your enemy. The consequence was a force that fought not just with physical disadvantages, but with psychological ones as well. Many soldiers in the Ardennes reached a point where they no longer cared about winning or losing, only about surviving until the next day. You're there, huddled with 3 other soldiers in the basement of a bombed-out house. No one has spoken for hours. You're all just staring into space, lost in your own private misery. Outside, the battle rages on, but in here, there's only the cold and the silence. You've stopped caring about the war, about victory, about anything except the primitive urge to stay warm, and that's when you realize the dark truth. People say the Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's last desperate gamble, a final offensive that failed spectacularly. The truth is more specific and worse. The German offensive was deadly enough on its own, but it was winter that turned it into something truly horrific. Winter became an active combatant, killing more soldiers than the Germans did in many sectors. Winter didn't just add to the suffering, it multiplied it exponentially, creating conditions where basic survival became a daily struggle. The dark reason winter turned the Bulge into a slow mass death wasn't just the cold, it was how every system designed to support the American soldier failed when confronted with extreme winter conditions. The uniforms failed, the medical system failed, the logistics failed, the equipment failed, the tactical planning failed, and finally, the human spirit failed under the relentless assault of cold. The lasting impact was profound. After the Battle of the Bulge, the American military completely rethought its approach to winter warfare. New winter clothing was developed and issued as standard equipment. Vehicles were modified with cold weather kits. Medical evacuation plans were redesigned with winter contingencies. Most importantly, the doctrine of winter warfare was rewritten, recognizing that winter wasn't just an environmental condition to be endured, but an active factor that could determine victory or defeat. The lessons learned in the Ardennes would influence American military planning for decades to come, from Korea to Afghanistan. But these lessons were written in blood, American blood, frozen in the snow of the Ardennes. That's the dark reason winter turned the Bulge into a slow mass death. War punished the assumption that nature could be ignored, and the men in those frozen foxholes paid the price.